I'm Jaynie Morris, host of Soul Sentred, the podcast. Great to have your company once again. Thank you so much for all of your emails, comments, and sharing of the podcast that we've been bringing to you so far, wherever you've been listening to your favourite podcast, and of course, always on our Soul Sentred YouTube channel, where you can subscribe and never miss an episode. Today, my guest has got something to add to the conversations that we love to bring to you about good health, well-being, fitness, and of course, longevity. And in amongst all of that is mindfulness, being in the present, and especially in this crazy world that we live in now, ever so much more important than ever before. I would like to, before I introduce you and get him to say hello and bring us up to speed about where he's been, what he's been doing, and more so what he's going to be doing in the future, I'd like to read something from his book that I read on the plane coming to the studios to do this special recording with him that I just feel strongly sets the entire scene for what you're about to experience. The opening night of a musical is wild. The mad rush of adrenaline, the excitement and thrill of the crowd eagerly taking their seats, the infectious nervous energy of the cast. Then there's the pretending to have it all together, that you're not feeling the overwhelming pressure and expectation, that you're in control, when really you're shitting bricks. When performers say they love opening nights, I always want to call bullshit. I don't love them at all. They generally suck. The best I can hope for is to get through unscathed, having a relieving glass of champagne at the end, and try to get some sleep if my body will allow it. Hopefully, when I wake up, the reviewers haven't crucified me. That's the opening introduction of this incredible book that has come onto my desk, Behind the Mask by Josh Piterman. I've known Josh for 15 years. From afar over that time, because our lives have been, all over the world, basically, of which you'll hear from him in a moment. I did meet him in 2010, and when he was singing at a very special event in Australia, and it's my absolute pleasure. Blah, I always mix up my words. I always do that when I've got somebody really special in front of me. Josh Piterman, welcome to Soul Sentred, the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jaynie. Thank you for having me on.
You are welcome. So, Josh, I wanted to share the beginning of that book, but I want us to go back first into and delve a little bit into your life for our audience, so that for those who haven't heard of you, I don't know where they've been living, obviously under a rock somewhere, but of course we go global, but you are a global superstar because of course you've performed to the West End, and you've had so many great successes in theatre and musicals. But can you just, for our audience, take us back and tell us a little bit about Josh Piterman?
Where do you want me to start?
When you were born.
I talk about it in the book. I grew up in a very upper middle class, definitely not upper class, upper middle class, so Jewish family in the inner suburbs of Melbourne. My parents are children of Holocaust survivors, and they really wanted to make a way in the world because they came from nothing. And becoming somebody, which is what I talk about in the book, this idea of somebody training, which I took from someone who's played a big part in my life, a gentleman by the name of Ram Dass, who's had a huge impact on my life, a great spiritual teacher for many people for many, many decades before he passed about 6 years ago. They needed to become somebody, because they came from absolutely nothing. They just came off the boat in the 50s with a couple of suitcases and a lot of ancestral trauma, and they worked really, really hard. My mum became a sort of leader in economics, and then more human resources and consultant in the space of sort of organizational relationship and culture. My dad became a professor of medicine, and they wanted us to have every opportunity that they didn't have. And so I think it's really important to start there, because that has helped me and hindered me. It really gave me every opportunity, every, music lesson I wanted to have, every bit of sports coaching I wanted to do, tennis, go to footy, this, that. Everything that I wanted was on my, was available to me as a kid. I never wished for anything. My parents weren't that present though. They worked really, really hard. And sometimes very late at night. My older sister and I became really independent very, very early. I remember cooking meals probably for myself in grade 5, so because what they really valued is that we had the education and the opportunities that they didn't, and they stopped at nothing to ensure that happened. And that for them, that was love of the highest order. And on reflection, I can go, absolutely it was. At the time, I think I was like, where's mum, where's dad? Why aren't they, working at the canteen? Like, why isn't mum doing that like other mums do on, when mum's day at the canteen in primary school? Why don't we get picked up from school or dropped to school? Why is there before care and after care? All of these sort of things that make you feel a bit unloved as a child. And I think, for me, that's where some of these wounds started from that led me to become a performer. And I'll go into that probably later. But that's probably the start. But it also instilled this thing in me that it's really important to become somebody, to really work hard. And my parents are the hardest workers I know. And I always vowed I'll never become a workaholic, but I just couldn't break that. That is sewn so deep into me. And I became a very, very hard worker at whatever it is that I wanted to do most, and manifested a lot of great things into my life, whether it was like, I want to be in the first tennis team, but I've barely picked up a tennis racket and it's year 10. And by year 11, I'm in the first tennis team because I just work. Like I was a skilled sports person and very coordinated, but diligence and hard work. I want to become a singer. I want to become a performing artist. You've never done a musical before year 11, Josh. Yeah, but I'm going to bloody do it. And so that's from my parents, that ability to work really, really hard at something. And so I had a seed of talent as a performer, something genetically in me, in my voice and how my vocal cords are. But I worked 5 times harder than anyone when I went to college, because that's all I knew. Hard work, discipline, dedication. And so that's how I have had the sort of journey I've had in terms of arriving at the top of the musical theatre world and playing roles like The Phantom and Jean Valjean and, other leading roles in other shows, both in Australia and internationally. It's because I worked so bloody hard for it, but that came at a cost. Yeah, a big cost, and that's what I had to go inwards and sort of discover.
Discover, which leads me into... So when you were sharing about your parents, thank you for that. When you were sharing about that, and one of the things that you said is whilst they were doing everything they possibly could to give you and your sister, everything that they didn't have, and that's totally understandable. I mean, beautiful. What they came from. Yep. And the ethics that they instilled in you as a direct result. However, you did also touch on the fact that, them being present and not being like doing the things like the other parents for other kids and what have you did. Did you find then, using that as a metaphor, did you find that then when you were focused on, the tennis and the becoming a performer and being the best that you possibly could, without, just going for it, did you find that you were lacking presence in your own, upon reflection, in my own throughout that time?
Yeah, I think I struggled a lot with presence. Yeah, I was very goal oriented, so it's all about the outcome and not about the journey to get there. And that can be cliche, but really, like, life is that. It's taken me a lot of years to sort of really work on that. And I want to say too to my parents, like, we all have wounds that we get from our parents, and if they were really, really present, but they didn't instill hard work and I wasn't as diligent and I didn't have the career that I've had, can blame your parents for that too, can't you? You can always go and blame your parents. Always. And it's the easy road out. The harder road is to see everything that they did and see everything that they didn't do, because how can they be absolutely everything? They're just human beings. And it's not to say that also that they didn't come to my sporting things and whatever. It's not like they were never there. Just things that you miss as a child that you notice that other children have play heavily in your mind. But it's being able to see everything they did and everything they didn't do, all the wounds that you get and all the therapy that you go through, and love them so, so limitlessly with unboundedness for every bit of human failing and every bit of human wonder and that they embody.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had the exact same experience, but as a parent with my children. So my children, I wanted them to have, my two sons, absolutely everything that the world could give them. But the only way to do that was to work and to strive. And so I wasn't present throughout the course of their early years and their teenage years and what have you. But upon reflection now as adults, and they're in their 40s, they can see now what you've just shared as well. So, I mean, none of us are perfect, but, we all love each other. Yeah. And that's the key for anything, especially as with family community.
And to love in the imperfection.
Yeah.
To accept and to forgive and all of these things that are so, so important that we forget, to not hold grudges and not bestow judgment and all these beautiful qualities that I'm sure a lot of religions base their teachings on. But that's really it. And so there were times where I did blame my parents for my inadequacies and whatever. But you turn inward, and which is what Behind the Mask is really about. Going inward, and you learn that they're just perfectly imperfect human beings like yourself.
Exactly. So in my introduction, of sharing with you the introduction of your book, can we talk about, before we get right into your book, because I really want to, and in fact, I'm going to ask up front, if it's all right with you, Josh, I think this is going to be 2 parts because we have got so much to go through. I'm going to keep you in the studio and we are going to do 2 parts of this because I know our audience are going to want it.
I kept the Arvo free.
Honestly, because and our audience will understand once we get into the crux of this. But can you just give us a little glimpse of when you're an incredible performer, you're an amazing artist, you have the most beautiful voice.
Thank you.
And I remember in 2010, I think that was the first thing I actually said to you when we were introduced. But Josh, can you give us a bit of a glimpse of what happened and got you into the lead role there at West End?
Yeah. Oh, it's an amazing story, and I can't tell the story without having a conversation around fear and my own sense of, limiting self-beliefs and, imposter syndrome and all sorts of things that we all face. And my biggest fear, I think our major fears are abandonment, death, the unknown, and failure. And in some ways, I felt that a fear of failure, public failure, I felt that a public failure and my fear around that would mean that I would be abandoned and that my career would die. It was like I couldn't possibly publicly fail. I couldn't bear that. And so I would balk at almost every opportunity to sing on television. I think I did a State of Origin national anthem twice, and I stuffed one up pretty badly. Sound issues that I could have rectified, but I just blamed the sound. It was much easier to blame than to take responsibility.
Always.
So I did an album. I'm getting to it, but I did an album with John Foreman, who's Aussies will know from Carols by Candlelight on Channel 9 and Australian Idol back in the day, and even played the piano for Bert Newton on GMA.
He did.
Yeah, classic.
I remember that.
Classic. And John, after we did this album, and did really well, the album went to number 1 on the classical charts, and it was just an awesome experience. I'd just finished a musical, Beautiful, the Carole King musical, for a year, and I was just holidaying in Italy, and I get a call from John. I'm like, John knows I'm away. Why would he be calling? I'm in Tuscany in my villa, and John says, hey, I'm the creative director of Australia Day Live, which is a concert we do on the forecourt of the Sydney Opera House annually. It's on the ABC, a few 100,000 people viewing it. And it's a rock and pop concert, but every year we like to pay homage to the Opera House, which we're all looking at as we perform, and everyone is sitting and standing around it, and there's probably 60, 70, 80,000 people there at Circular Quay watching on. We'd love you to sing Nessun Dorma. And it'll be a big fireworks display coming out of the Opera House and across Circular Quay. And it was like, when I think about my nervous system, and I do so much work on nervous system now, and, our autonomic nervous system is split into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Sympathetic, fight or flight; parasympathetic, rest, digest, recover. This was a massive response for my sympathetic nervous system. I went into complete fight or flight. The adrenaline kicked in. Stress hormone cortisol probably kicked in as well. It was like my whole body wanted to say no to this. And I don't know how or why. I've sort of, when I reflect upon it, it was almost out of body, like something divine passed through me. And yes came out of my mouth. And John's like, well, fantastic, great. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I literally was like, Nessun Dorma, like start practicing, and just because I was so scared to stuff it up immediately, let's start practicing, even though
Right
this thing's
now.
in 4 months' time
I'm
or
on
whatever.
holiday. I'm in Tuscany.
And from one end, it's like sing Nessun Dorma in Italy. Oh, great, when in Rome, or when in Tuscany. But I was just so much fear. And I just went, okay, what do I know? I know to work hard. So I'd sung it a couple of times before when I was with the 10-10ers, we sung it, but I'd never sung it solo other than at a corporate event or two. So I wanted to be deeply in my body so that if it's in my muscle memory, I can't stuff this up. And so I just worked hard. And I worked with my coach on it when I got back often. And there were times when doing it and the thought of being out there, I was like physically ill at just the thought of it. So anxious about it. And I do all the work that I do. I do my meditation or my breathing, my mantras and whatever, and put myself into a place where I can do this. And as I got, progressively closer to it, and I was getting stronger and stronger at singing it, and there were times of the day where normally I wouldn't sing because my voice is just waking up, I'd warm up and practice it, and just so that nothing could go wrong, like control the controllables. Preparation is number one of that. And when it came to the night, yes, I was scared, but the night felt special. There was something energetically just felt amazing. I had this beautiful room in the Opera House dressing room looking out across Sydney Harbour, and I just sort of quite overwhelmed with gratitude for the opportunity and the experience. And I knew it was going to be a defining moment. And I felt ready. Not that I didn't have those nerves or whatever as you get pre-performance, but I just felt so prepared. And as I was getting out there, there's still that bit that's shitting yourself, and I'm still repeating my mantras. I am free. I am playful or passionate. I'm calm and I'm enough. And I just got out there and gave the defining performance of my career, and blew the socks off it. I remember holding that last note, that big top note at the end of Nessun Dorma. I held for extra long because it was like purging out, over a decade's worth of fear. So this is 2019. So yeah, well over a decade of just fear and all these, these big fears that were deeply seated into me. And within a couple of weeks, I was invited to, the footage was seen by Cameron McIntosh, major producer, world's biggest musical theatre producer, and Andrew Lloyd Webber, who wrote Phantom of the Opera and many other musicals. People know Lord Andrew and Sir Cameron, and invited over to sing, to audition for the Phantom. And within 6 months, I was playing the role in the West End.
Wow.
And it totally changed the course of my life. And it just has been a massive reminder to me that fear is like an internal crisis for us. But crisis is always an opportunity to either expand as a soul, as a human, or contract, you know? And you can't walk around it. You can't walk over it. You can't swim under it. You can only go through, you know, through the fire of your fears. And that's where the opportunity for growth really lies. And it filled me with so much confidence, you know.
It was the breakthrough, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you need to break through. That's what I mean. Like it is going through.
It is the breakthrough. Yeah.
And so it was defining. So that's how I ended up there. And I need to give context to that because it's not as simple as like rocked up and sang Nessun Dorma, kid. And then, you know, it was many, many years of working, of having a moment, an opportunity and grabbing with both hands and moving through all the internal shit that someone goes through in order to arrive at a moment and actually, you know, make the most of it. And we all have them.
And in that moment as well, would I be right in saying this, Josh, that when you said yes and then hung up the phone and went, okay, here we go, that the end game, for whatever a better term, was that moment at Sydney Opera House and doing the best performance that you could possibly do, and there was nothing else. There was no other interference. There was nothing. It was all about that. However, yet, not only did you purge, as using your words, and all of a sudden have this massive breakthrough, it then became you, maybe consciously or subconsciously, openly receptive to everything else that the universe has to offer. And then, of course, the calls start coming in, and, you know, so Lord Andrew calls you, and West End calls, and
there was something energetically happening already that I wanted to speak to.
Yeah, okay.
In it was that I'd had a meeting when I'd got back from Italy with a dear friend who's a major Australian international musical theatre producer called Michael Castle, and we had dinner at Chin Chin on Flinders Lane in Melbourne, and he said, he was the producer of the musical I did before going to Tuscany. Beautiful. And he said, what do you want to do next? And I said, I've always wanted to play the Phantom. I'm probably a bit young. He's like, no, you're not. You're perfect for it. Go out there and make it happen in the world, because I'm certainly going to be a part of when it comes to Australia. It'd be so much easier to cast you if you had played it somewhere else internationally. And I took it. I got on the phone to another dear friend, Guy Simpson, who I'd done some workshops with, but he's a major musical supervisor of a lot of sort of older style musicals in across the Southern Hemisphere, Phantom being one of them. I did some work with him on the Phantom stuff as well while I'm doing the Nessun Dorma stuff. And so I was just sort of planting the seed of Phantom. I even went to a crystal mandala making workshop in January of 2019. And when I did the workshop, and I love crystals and all of that kind of stuff, when I did the workshop, they gave us a little sort of cardboard cutout of a leaf, and we were to write one word on it. So this is before the Nessun Dorma, Before
you got the call in Tuscany?
No, after I got the call in Tuscany, but before I'd auditioned for Phantom, before I even knew that, you know, Cameron McIntosh or Angela or whoever would see this or whatever, I wrote Phantom on the back of that leaf. And you need to put that leaf out to the, like a leaf, it just moves in the winds and the energy of manifestation begins. So the seed was so planted energetically, then I took this opportunity with both hands. It just was all lining up towards this thing. And then Phantom's been the role that I've played the most ever. I've, you know, played a lot in London, and then COVID hit, and then you know, obviously did bring it back to Australia, played at Sydney in the Opera House, and it was so sort of such a beautiful sort of 360 thing where you put this thing out to the world, you sung this version of Nessun Dorma looking at the Opera House, and then the next time you're there, you're actually singing the Phantom in the Opera House. It's just beautiful sort of universal synergy. And then I obviously got to do it in Melbourne too. And it'd be a role like I sort of talk about in the book. I don't want to do lots of musicals anymore. Like I've got so many other things I want to share with the world, and I don't need to do 8 shows a week every week. But the Phantom is a role that I'd go back to time and time again. So special to me.
So let's go to the opening night of a musical, which is wild. The mad rush of the adrenaline, the excitement and the thrill, yet you are shitting bricks.
Shitting bricks.
Let's talk about this, Josh.
Look,
because this is the foundation.
It's the foundation of the book.
The foundation.
Where
of
it
this
comes
beautiful
from
book.
is look, let me put it this way. The first time an audience really see it, a musical, is opening night. Yeah? And that's where it's judged, reviewed, whatever. It's the grand final. And it's day one. For any other sporting code or whatever, the grand final or the Super Bowl or whatever, it's the end of the season.
The end of it. You
got to do all the things on the way up. You got to learn all the lessons, work out all the things. What's our game plan? How do we do this? How do I play my best in this situation? All these things. And then you get to, and you keep winning, and you get to the end, and that's when you get the big game. It's at the start. It's strange, but it makes sense for a musical, but it doesn't make sense for the internal meeting with oneself and how they view themselves in the role. You're like, I'm not ready. I've only done this for a handful of previews. I've had a few weeks rehearsals. I'm like, I haven't tried this out enough. I haven't perfected this, and yet I feel this pressure to be perfect, and that's where it comes from. It's imposter syndrome at its best, where the internal expectations are so much higher than one's current capabilities. And to be honest, if you really look at it and zoom out, the external expectations are probably in line with my current capabilities. Like people aren't wanting me to be any more than where I am.
Yeah.
But in my own internal psyche, it's like, I'm not where I want to be with this. Yeah. And so therefore confidence is really low. Yeah. And that's how I always felt. I'm like, I'm not doing the role the way I really want to be doing it yet. I feel like there's so much more I could get out of this. And haven't arrived in this yet. And yet here I am with all the pressure of the press and whatever, and having to do this in a certain way. And maybe it's, what I'm actually hearing in my head about how to do it is the director's voice or the music director's voice. I don't feel like I'm embodying this and owning this yet. It's not mine yet. Whereas come and see it 30, 40 shows later. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Was it? Wait,
for a lot of shows that I did,
for you?
yeah, I was like,
was it okay after that?
Give me 3 or 4 weeks to really get into it. 4 weeks, yeah. So what's 8, 16, 24, 30 shows, 32 shows. Then I'm like, beautiful.
Okay.
But opening night, I never felt like I was like, right there. Something with Phantom, though. I just said there was something so spiritual and energetic, and it was probably the many years of the work that I've been doing energetically to lead to a role like the Phantom. It was my dream role along with Jean Valjean in Les Miserables. Something happened that opening night. Was it the perfect performance? Absolutely not. That opening night in the West End. But it felt so embodied. It felt so connected. It felt like I had landed and was taking off at the same time, which I describe in the book. And then it just expanded and expanded from there. And I've never had an opening night that was more beautiful than that one.
Could you, when you look back on that very first night, Josh?
I just want to say,
yes,
when I talk about how the lack of presence of my parents growing up, there is not a bloody opening night of production that I've done around the world, other than Hairspray. They couldn't get to Hairspray in the UK, but they were there for that opening of Phantom.
Wow.
They were there for Les Miserables.
Yeah.
My dad's health wasn't great. He still found a way to get to Les Miserables in London.
Yeah.
They have certainly been there.
Your parents are amazing.
Wow.
They are. So in that moment, on that first night, and the way you were feeling, and both physically, emotionally, and spiritually,
And mentally, all of it.
all the whole shabam on that night. When you look back, and we're going to get into Behind the Mask, when you look back on that, Do you see similarities in how you were feeling on that opening night in other times in your life when you were about to start something for the very first time, or if something was going wrong in your life or you wanted to fix something? Did you have sort of similar feelings, and in that, if you did, have you found a way to move through that to make it flow better? Or if you haven't, can you see how some people listening to what you just said might think, I actually felt like that when I was going through X, Y, Z? Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I felt on that opening night, I might not answer this exact way you need me to.
No, I don't.
What I felt on that opening night was, yes, there were nerves, and yes, there were, all those butterflies and all that kind of stuff. But what I felt was transcendent and free and, to a degree, sort of playful, explorative. I was out there adventuring through this character, and I'd let Josh go. And then there are times, obviously, when Josh comes back and goes, hey, what about you didn't hit that note though? And then you come back to presence. But there was so much of it that just felt transcendent is the way. And for me, that feeling is flow state that we talk about, where you're not in your own way. And that is what I've learned, that is actually, I'm not trying to get out there to be the best performer or the win this or get the best review or whatever. I'm trying to get free.
Does it help to be behind the mask?
Yeah, I think you've got to do a lot of work behind the mask to get free. Yeah. And when I say free, that doesn't mean high. Because I've tried getting high before and you just come down. So you go up and down, and whether that's alcohol or, taking different drugs or sex or work can be that, or the gym or whatever, that, like, I just want to fucking get that rush or whatever. You get high and you come down. What I've sort of learned through the process of playing Phantom, which is the role that's taught me the most about myself, is that I'm trying to get free, and I think we're all trying to get free.
Yeah.
And whether, I shared some things there, but whether it's a new house or whether it's a better car or that new pair of jeans or that, more followers on Instagram or more money in the bank or, I think it's because we want the feeling, not that thing, but we want the feeling that comes with that. And that's some feeling of freedom or some feeling of bliss or whatever. And what I've learned about that is it's a feeling. It doesn't actually come from the external world. It's coming from inside of us. But we make it conditional on the external world. When I get this, if I get this, then I'm going to be more free. And actually, you're going to have a lot of suffering there.
Everyone's chasing it, and it's happening more and more now.
Clinging, chasing.
All the time.
Desperate for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get the rush of it, and then you don't get it. So I've got to get another rush.
Yes.
But actually, if we turn inward and realise that this is a feeling is something I cultivate, and even beyond a feeling, a state that I cultivate within myself, behind the mask, many, many layers of stuff, that's power. That's agency. And when you can feel free inside yourself, then you can bring it to everything that you do. And you suddenly have an impact in the world and a contribution to the world that is so energetically positive, and it has ripples. Yeah.
And that's exactly what your book Behind the Mask is all about, and it's so empowering. And you know what we're going to do right now, Josh? We're going to take a break for a week, and we're going to have you back. We're going to do part 2 for next week, because I just want to talk all about, I want you to give us a really good insight into your book, because I love your book, Behind the Mask. We've had a great foundation right now, and so you are going to stick around. And
I'll see you in a week.
Here's Auntie Jaynie Jaynie saying you're going to, you're sticking around, okay,
Well, I'm just
Josh?
going to sit in the studio for a week.
You are going to sit around. Well, our audience are going to hear this in a week's time, so just stick around, and we will delve more into behind the mask, and that's exactly what I want you to do. Thank you so much for listening to this part 1 of episode 5 with my very special guest, Josh Piterman. We are going to be coming back and talking in part 2. We're going to talk about nothing but everything that's in his book, Behind the Mask. It's an incredible self-help book that he has written, and even me, with all these years of self-help and working in that industry, I learn a few things too. So join me in our part 2, episode 5, and remember to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Subscribe, share it with somebody that you might think might be interested in hearing what Josh has had to say so far. And remember, if you want to keep in touch with anything else we're doing, just go to our website, soulcentre.com. That's Soul Centre with an S. I'm Jaynie Morris, and I'll look forward to having your company next time.